Welcome to Triple Sigma episode 10. This is your host, Alex Feinberg, and joining me today is one of my favorite teammates in the Colorado Rockies system, but so much more than an ex-professional athlete, Mr. Chris Vasami. Chris, welcome.
Thanks, brother. I'm happy to be here.
So Chris and I got to know each other in 2009. Both of us were in extended spring training, not exactly the pick of the litter in the Colorado Rockies organization, but we had the opportunity to be professional baseball players nevertheless. And Chris always impressed me, along with a lot of the other guys that I played with from the Northeast, frankly, with his social skills, his ability to navigate situations, not just on the field, but off the field. He always struck me as someone who is incredibly mature. You know, Chris, you didn't just kind of luck your way into becoming a professional baseball player. So for those who are not familiar with you, how did you become you?
It all started, I grew up right outside New York City. I'm the second of four kids. My older brother's 6.5 years older than me. And I really bring it all the way back to when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. And I'd be in the backyard playing against my older brother and his buddies, one-on-one wiffle ball, one-on-one stick ball, whatever it may be. And, in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, I'd give up a walk-off and I'd come in, all pissed off and upset. My mom was like, "You're going to be fine." And of course at the time, you're just, all you know is that, your whole world is that. But that's really where my maturity and my competitive spirit started, was just going against older people, thinking that I could and really believing that I could. And then the independence kind of came from not just my older brother being 6.5 years older than me, but I have 2 younger siblings that are 2.5 years younger than me, 3.5 years younger than me, but they're only 11 months apart. So it's almost, they were kind of pseudo twins. So there were just so many times, and I've unpacked this over the years, where I was kind of left to myself to kind of figure out my world. I mean, I really think that it was a huge benefit to me because I was able to kind of navigate the world, for lack of better terms, on my own terms. And so that, and then growing up in the Northeast, where you're just shown a lot of things at an earlier age, whether you like to or not, hopping on the train, headed into New York City and enjoying all that time. It's kind of one of those things where you just learn to be cultured quickly. And obviously there's times where now, me being a father, there's times where I wish I was a little bit more sheltered, which I'll probably end up doing with my daughters. But nonetheless, being able to just really take all these experiences and help me grow and help me kind of understand that everything was going to be left up to me no matter what. And I think that's really kind of helped me propel me in my, not just, school, but also becoming a professional baseball player. In high school, there were a lot of times where I was presented with the opportunity: do I go hang out with my buddies or do I get more swings in? And so I kind of got to this point where on a Friday night, I would tell my buddies, "Hey, I need to go lift and I need to go work out and I need to get my swings in. I'll call you when I'm done. If you're still out, I'll come meet you." And we all know from anybody who's been in high school, 99% of the times, no one's still out because there's nothing to do. We're just trying to force these things. So just knowing what it meant to put in the work, to have the discipline, to be able to sit there and say, yeah, I wake up tomorrow and I'm proud of what I did yesterday. And so that helped me become really the player that believed that I could do anything. And that helped me. Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's such a great foundation for so many people to accomplish their first big win in life. But so many people reach a breaking point, as I imagine you did, when you discover your first real experience with adversity, that foundation doesn't quite topple. And it's very easy to look back at all the time that you invested in becoming the man that you became and wonder, how did I find myself in this situation? And so, I would imagine the first real time that happened to you would have been when you were diagnosed with cancer, but I could be wrong. So, perhaps for our listening audience, if you could tell that story and you could tell the different mind tricks that your brain was playing on you and the different Jedi tricks that you had to play on your mind in order to wake up every day and put the work in and continue putting the work in, despite the fact that you were clearly dealt a worse hand than other people who put in similar or less work.
It all started when I got the news and you start to kind of sift through all these different scenarios in your head. And the first thing that went my head was like, wait, I was a professional baseball player. I've known everything that's gone into my body. How can this be? How could I be getting a phone call on January 5th, 2017 that I have thyroid cancer? And then you start to understand and that so much of what you thought you were in control of just really went out the window. And I was, for the first probably 16, 18 months of my diagnosis, because this was a territory I had never been a part of, I was the token victim. I sat around and waited for doctors and science and medicine to do their job, and nothing was working. I got diagnosed with papillary thyroid cancer first, beat that, thought I beat it. And then 12 months later, I'm back in the hospital having another surgery because it turned into another type of cancer called tall cell. And my first surgery had all my whole thyroid taken out. And now this surgery, I'm having, tons of lymph nodes taken out of my neck and my chest. And so, and again, still sitting back going, well, I'm not in control of this. Doctors, science, medicine, surgeries. But then the real mindset shift came when I realized that, one, I had hope, because hope allows us the opportunity to realize that you have a chance. And then it really was going back on my foundation, as you talked about before, and understanding that I had so many of these resilient tools that made me a professional baseball player. Now it was a matter of repurposing them in this new battle. So yes, relinquishing control to the people and the things that I needed to, while also sitting here going, wait, there's still a lot that's in my control that if I take care of on a daily basis, if I feel 1% better than I did yesterday, I can actually get to the point where I'm actually shocking my doctors because they can't believe I'm doing the things that I'm doing while still battling this diagnosis.
So how did it work though when you were in the thick of it, when it's not like your financial responsibilities ceased when you
Mm-hmm.
got your diagnosis? It's not like your responsibilities to other people in your family just dropped
Mm-hmm.
when you had this diagnosis. And so you're dealing with a hellstorm with respect to your own health, but life doesn't stop. And so, how are you able to manage your emotions when you not only have all of this bad news that you're grappling with, but you actually have an underlying physical condition that is making it harder for your mind to deal with
Mm-hmm.
bad news? How did that all work out? And what were the biggest challenges that you faced in actually, riding the ship through that storm?
It sounds cliche, but you really need to find what your new norm is, because it's very easy to fall back into the idea of, well, when I was a professional baseball player, I could do this. And when I was in college, I could do this. Those are they're gone. I mean, you are physiologically, chemically a different person. So it's really being able to have the perspective of taking a step back, taking inventory, and really getting in tune with everything, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, all of it. And the first thing that helped me was, and I had never thought about this before, but understanding that you can grieve and have gratitude at the same time. I was able to sit there and grieve the life that I used to have. I'm grieving the life I'm currently having, and I'm grieving the life that I'm going to have one day, because treatment it's never going to stop. The blood tests are never going to stop. The ultrasounds are never going to stop. Like, this is now a part of my life. But I also could wake up in full gratitude, and that gratitude was the balance to the grieving. And it's waking up, sitting there going, to your point, I still have clients who need me and who are counting on me. My wife needs me and counts on me. My daughters are needing me and counting on me. So waking up, understanding that, hey, if you can get out of bed, then like it's a good day. And so then just repurposing what I'm supposed to be doing, while also understanding what the new norm is and giving myself more grace, because yes, physically I'm more exhausted than I've ever been. I'm putting on weight. I'm losing weight, whether I want to or not. Introduce a new medicine, and it takes 6 to 8 weeks to even know if it's working or not. So being able to really understand that you can kind of figure out what your universe is and your place in it at that moment, it's a huge stepping stone to be able to feel healthy and also be able to start to advocate for yourself and show up for yourself on a daily basis, no matter what's in the cards that day.
Now, you mentioned for the first 18 months following your diagnosis, you were playing the classical victim. How long did it take you in that 18-month process to realize that's what you were doing? And then from there, what was the process to stop it? Was it immediate? Was it, no, you cannot be doing this? Or was it a slower realization that you were practicing the exact things that you have known for decades that you cannot practice? It's just in a different form, so it's harder for you to recognize and be disciplined enough to stop doing it.
It was definitely a combination of both. I think it was when I showed up back in the hospital, back in my surgeon's office for the second round of this, after radioactive iodine, after localized radiation, all the things that were supposed to kill it didn't. That's when it was kind of that light bulb moment of, hey man, this isn't working. And you're already, and I'll use baseball terms. I mean, I was waking up with 2 strikes on me every single day. The first strike was cancer, and the second strike was my awful mindset, sitting around and waiting, and sitting around and feeling bad for myself, and sitting around telling people like, you just don't understand. So it was being able to almost separate the two and say, okay, cool. Now, yes, this might be a harder thing than I've ever had to do, but this is my mission now. So, being able to untangle those thought process, being able to untangle the kind of victimhood, it probably took like 2 months, I would say, like 2 months of real solid sit down every single day and really rewire and reprogram my head into understanding what I can take from this challenge.
How did your relationship with God change in this entire process? I'm sure in the beginning you questioned everything. And, so how did that go?
Yeah. So, I had been a Catholic my whole life and was a big believer. And during that time period, same thing, man. I had a lot of arguments with God, shaking my hand at shaking my fist up at the sky, going, why me? Why looking at people go down the road who are, 200-300 pounds overweight with like real anger and resentment. And the day it all changed really was I was walking down the street. It was a December day, and here in Charlotte, we can get these really cold days, but it's still blue skies and sun shining. And it was one of those days. And so I'm walking down the street, and for some reason, something told me to take my shoes off. And I took my shoes off, and I'm literally walking barefoot up and down the street for probably like 20-30 minutes. And it was this moment of clarity for me. It was this moment of peace that I knew that this was Jesus walking with me. Like this was my walk with Jesus. And it was God's salvation, and it was God's mercy, and it was God showing me like, look, you could have been dead 3 times by now. Like I never left you. You left me. You pulled away from me, but I've been here this whole time. And I had this overwhelming peace come over me that even if I had died tomorrow, like I'm okay with it. But also understanding that each day now is an opportunity to take back my life and be in control of the things that I can and still get so much out of this life. And what's interesting about that is I was on a call with a guy about 2 months ago, and he had just beaten stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he basically asked me the same question, like, what was your peace moment after he shared his with mine? And I said it. And his business partner came on and he said, Chris, I just have to stop you guys for a sec. Anytime that somebody talks about symbolism, I have to go to scripture. So he goes to scripture and he said, there's 2 things that popped up. Number 1, from the New Testament in Acts, God tells all the apostles, go out 2 by 2, go into people's houses, share the good news. And if for whatever reason you're not welcome, leave your sandals at the door, find a new pair and continue your journey. He goes, but the second one that really hit home is from Exodus. And it's when Moses goes to the burning bush for the first time. And God says, leave your sandals. They're no longer welcome here because you're on sacred, holy ground. And he's telling me this, and I'm getting chills thinking about it because that was 6.5 years ago. And I've been living this moment and this testimony for 6.5 years. Now, the interesting thing is when I go the next day, when I dive into scripture and I dove into Exodus, it's Exodus chapter 3, verse 5. Alex, I've been number 13 since I was 13 years old. My middle school number was 35. My high school number, which is retired, is 35. My college number was 35. It was like this kind of this culmination, this moment of just encompassing joy that, there's always been a plan.
Now, when you took your shoes off that day in Charlotte, were you doing it with any understanding of scripture, or did it just seem like the right thing to do?
No, it was just, I had this thing just told me to take my shoes off. I had never even heard of these scriptures before. That's what I mean. I never even dove into them before.
So, how does this change you as a coach? Because, previously, you had been coaching other athletes prior to this diagnosis. You'd been a hard worker prior to this diagnosis. You probably didn't take too many excuses from other people prior to this diagnosis. All this has done is it has elevated your game and require you to scale higher and higher mountains. But then would it also make it harder for you to relate to other people who haven't even scaled that initial mountain? Do you find that, you've gotten so advanced in your grappling with life's challenges that you may lose the capacity to interact with common men? Or how do you stay grounded through the whole process?
I would say I stay grounded through patience and through understanding and through empathy. And what I tell people all the time is I can understand, but I can't relate. And so when people are out there complaining or telling me they don't have time or telling me how hard this is, I can understand because I understand the human experience, but I can't relate. And so that's really where kind of the buffer comes in. And it's like a natural boundary that gets set. So that way expectations are set. So that way I'm not expecting something else and therefore I'm not getting frustrated.
So how is this experience, let's say, shifted the way that you coach other executives? Because, you're finding yourself on more advanced speaking tours, you obviously deserve to be on, where you're in front of larger and larger and more successful audiences. When executives come to you, what do you find their major challenges are? And what models do you draw upon from your own life experience to help them succeed to the best of their capacity?
I think for so many of them, their number one motivator is provider, whether it's providing for their own family or providing the jobs to the employees that at their company or the people on their teams. And so they get stuck in this provider mode and their self-discovery gets pushed to the side. And so a lot of times they just won't get out of their own ways because they want to make up the excuses as to why they don't have the time to go to the gym. I don't have the time to read. I don't have the time to work on myself. I don't have the time to be introspective. I don't have the time to sit down and make a list of questions that I want to hold myself accountable. I don't have time to make non-negotiables with myself because their whole life is based off a transaction.
Mhm,
And a lot of times it's being able to shift that perspective from transaction to interaction. It's shifting their perspective from living a conditional life to how can you live an unconditional life? A lot of times
mhm,
I'm asking them, are you willing to plant trees knowing you'll never sit in their shade? Or do you always have to get something back for your time and your effort? And so a lot of times these are the conversations that we end up having for not only the now, but also in the future. Like what happens when your role as provider goes away one day? Now what do you have? Like, what's retirement going to look like? Is I've worked with executives where they get done and at 65 years old, their marriage was crap and their kids want nothing to do with them.
yeah,
Whereas a lot of time, go ahead.
that's quite common.
Yeah.
That's quite common when your eye is fixated on one particular thorn in your side to the exclusion of other problems that you face. It's almost like as men, we're hunters, and when we have
Hmm.
one target, we're very good at taking down that singular target. We're typically better than women at taking down singular targets. The challenge is life will present you with multiple targets, and if you ignore your multiple targets so that you can take down one singular target, you may be known in your business community as being very successful, but that's not what completes you, and that's not ultimately what makes you feel successful when you're 70 or 80 years old.
Well, and I think, it's interesting. You put up a post today about the idea of, are you willing to be 1% better next week than you were this week? And I think that speaks to ego. And I think men have a lot of ego. And one of the things that has benefited me from this whole cancer situation is that I no longer have ego. Just it has stripped me of it because every time I thought I was in control, we're going to make this work, I think we got it figured out, I'm presented with another opportunity. So that pride and that ego goes away. And so then it's a matter of understanding that, I have to use what I've gone through now to be able to serve. A lot of us, ego gets in the way, right? So we don't look at it like I'm 1% better next week. We look at it like, wait, I only lifted 15 pounds today. I only lifted 30 pounds today. Where it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, well, 30 will turn into 35 and 35 will turn into 40 at some point. And so I think it's a lot helping people kind of sift through that ego that is just really an inflated sense of self that you are getting externally as opposed to internally.
Right. I almost look at it like a immature negotiating tactic where if you're dealing with a small child and, she doesn't like the first offer, the answer is no. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And it's a negotiation attempt to try to get a better first offer. But what does that look like if somebody's 30 pounds overweight? It's I'm not going to try anything unless it works right away.
Hmm.
And that is the child in you's attempt to negotiate with reality when you want to look a very different way much faster than what's reasonably expected. At some point, you have to realize that you're acting like a small child and you have to shift your focus from what you look like or the results that you're going to get tomorrow versus the process and how sustainable it is. And however long it takes, it doesn't matter because you're doing something that is sustainable and headed in generally the correct direction. And if you're doing something that is sustainable and headed in the generally correct direction, you're going to reach your destination.
I mean, it's exactly right. Even just using my own example for now, a year and a half ago, year and change ago, I was benching 395, but I felt awful. My body was miserable, and I didn't feel good waking up every day. Yeah, it was cool to say that I could bench 395, but again, that's ego talking more
Couldn't quite
than,
get 4 plates, huh?
no, man, might have to go one day. But it was this, but now here I am, and, you know, doing 5 sets of 8 on deadlift at 225 or 185 makes me feel so much better.
Hmm.
I feel stronger. I feel better. My body feels better. My mobility is better. Like all these things are better at the lower weight with more volume because it's sustainable.
Yeah, that's a negotiation that every ex-athlete has to make with himself. You know, how
Mhm.
much longer am I going to lift as heavy as I possibly can? I think I basically retired from lifting heavy things last year,
Yeah.
and I think last year I had some pretty good numbers. I did Zercher squats 425 for 4 reps. I deadlifted 495 for 5 reps, and I don't think I'm going to do that again. And
Yeah.
that's okay. I like feeling good.
Yeah, exactly.
So, for the listening audience who isn't, or ontologists or, biologists,
Mhm.
how does it work when you say that you're always going to be fighting cancer? How come you can't just beat it? Is because you got your thyroid removed, so
Mhm.
like where is the cancer?
So it is now in other lymph nodes throughout my neck. And I have what's called a surgical diagnosis now. So the idea is that if things get big enough, or if the lymph nodes, the shape of them get more misshapen than they are now, then that would be cause to go do a needle biopsy and see if it's time to come to take them out. So because I've had my thyroid taken out, I we now treat this type of thyroid cancer almost like it's a thyroid disease. And so my cancer is really dependent upon my thyroid numbers. And so, which is dependent upon my medicine. So I can say now, after, 5 years of going at it with my current doctor, who's Dr. Henderson, she's amazing, oncology, endocrinology down in Charleston. She, when the cocktail of meds is right and my numbers are down, then we feel pretty confident that the cancer will be able to stay at bay. And maybe one day, we can sit there and say, cancer's dormant instead of maybe, in remission or anything like that. But I'll give you a perfect example, man. Like last week, I went to her and my thyroid numbers were the best they've been in 5 years. So that's the good news. But the other news is that when she did my ultrasound, like 2 new lymph nodes popped up that had never been there before, misshapen. And so now they're on my map. And, Chris from 6.5 years ago on Wednesday night would have got home, canceled work, laid in bed. Why me? What's going on? Wednesday night, I went to work. Thursday morning, I got up and went to the gym because that's what I'm in control of.
So, how does your diet change? You've probably learned a lot about cancer that most other people our age are only peripherally familiar with. And I always
Mhm.
assume that, if I got cancer, the first thing I would do before anything major is I would just stop eating for 10 days to see
Mhm.
if I could starve the cancer. And then,
Mhm.
if that didn't work, probably dramatically reduce my glucose and carbohydrate consumption. How is your diet? How's your lifestyle changed? Do you have any hypotheses as to how you actually ended up with this cancer in the first place based on all the research that you've done?
I think for me, what it comes down to is I think it was environment for me, honestly. I think it was less about food. I think it was more environment. You know, maybe it was growing up on a baseball field, being exposed to Roundup all the time. Maybe, it could have been any of these things. But just from what I've learned, the food itself really doesn't have a lot to do with this type of cancer because it is it's hormonal driven. I tested positive for the BRAF gene, which is a hormonal genetic indicator. So that plus environment, that's really kind of where my hypothesis comes from. And then from a diet nutrition standpoint, for me, I'm at my best when I'm cutting all dairy out, except for like 0% Greek yogurt, just because it's a really doesn't bother my stomach and it's a really good way for me to get protein. But yeah, for me, when I cut out processed foods and I'm cutting out sugars and pastries and things like that, and I'm really sticking to whole foods, it's apropos. I went to the farmer's market this morning and got a whole box of stuff, and got some sourdough bread from a woman there who, I know exactly like every single ingredient she uses. So it's just being able to just be more aware of the whole foods and the fibrous foods that we can have. And I know you're a big fan of this, but being able to sit there and be intuitive enough to know that if I'm eating protein dominant, mostly plants, a lot of fruit, I'm in a really good place.
You know, our listening audience doesn't realize this, but I've speculated that the incidence of cancers on the Tri-Cities Dust Devils team that we played on may have something to do with the fact that about 10 miles up the street was Hanford, Washington. That's occasionally documented as America's Chernobyl
Yeah, I
because of all
remember
the
that.
nuclear testing that they used to do there over the last 50.
Hmm.
How many seasons did you play in Tri-Cities? 2, yeah. So it's hard to say because it's like, we spent 3 months, 6 months of our lives there, and,
Yeah.
like, other people have lived there for a decade without getting cancer. But, the health issues that, had come with, Chris and another guy on that team just seemed like a little bit odd given
Hmm.
the fact that we were professional athletes and, otherwise, very good health. You're like, "Okay, so, like, let's try to triangulate this." Oh, yeah, they did call the place we were playing America's Chernobyl.
I know.
So I wonder what that has to do with anything.
Yeah. And I think that's, a lot of times you sit there and you try to say, why is this happening to me? What's going on? And I think the best thing we can do is sit there and go, great, it's done. Now, how am I going to react to what's happening to me? And more importantly, how am I going to prepare for what else could happen to me? And so, just being able to do as much as we can, we've gotten rid of a lot of the plastic in our house. Everything is glass and everything is ceramic and things like that. Taking all the information, sifting through it, and finding the commonalities, no matter how extreme it is. You're always going to find some commonalities.
So how do we turn this loss into a win for you? Obviously, you have a ton of experience that can help other people grow. You were already a coach prior to the diagnosis. You're a father whose kids can obviously learn from you depending on the amount of details that you want to share with them. Well, I guess starting with your family, how transparent are you with your kids with what you're going through? And then, what are your goals as an individual for how we can take this awful experience and make your surroundings, your life, and the world a better place for it?
When it comes to my girls, they know daddy is sick. They know daddy takes medicine every day. I used to have to give myself shots. Luckily, I weaned myself off of those. But, they saw it. I wasn't going to hide it from them because I wanted them to know, like, this is medicine. It makes daddy better. It makes daddy better for you. I'm lucky to be here and be able to be your dad. So they know that piece. But we also tell them too, no matter what our circumstances are, there's things that we have to do. And, tough times help us grow and tough times make us stronger. And, I do affirmations with them all the time about being strong and being brave and having courage. And so one day, yes, I will tell them the whole story because one of the most amazing things about the story is that out of a possible 24 symptoms, I've had 23. And the only thing I haven't has is infertility.
Wow.
So it's really amazing to have these two beautiful gifts. Now, to be totally transparent with everybody, because of the hormones and because of the brain function and all that stuff, I needed Cialis to help me do the job. But God was able to give me these two gifts. So one day they will be able to understand that in the midst of all of it, like we got these two beautiful gifts that they are. And the other piece, the other answer to your question is I'm here to serve. Like that is my mission now. I want to help people think differently about their life. I don't want them to wait for a catastrophe to have them be their wake up call. Like, please use my catastrophe. Please, what I've gone through, and we've just scratched the surface on some of the shit that I've had to go through because of uncontrollable hormones, meds not being right, not being on meds I should have been on, not having serotonin anymore, getting myself on an SSRI, like all these things that, you have to go through some dark, dark shit to come out the other side and be like, okay, wow, I'm stronger, but also like I need your help. So I want to be able to serve people and be able to help people think a little bit differently about their life so that when it comes to that self-discovery, when it comes to understanding that adversity is an opportunity, to understand that you need to embrace the struggle, to understand that I need you to run into the darkness, not run away from it. because on the other side of that is so much joy and strength and wisdom in this life. And it's really fucking beautiful.
So for those who are interested in having you speak to their organization or working with you as a coach, how do they get in touch with you?
Best thing would be my website, chrisvasami.com. My number's on there, email's on there. You can go and check it out and see if we jive and see if we're aligned. And if this would be, a really good fit for us to be able to work with not only you as an individual, but your team and your corporation, so that people can feel really good about what they're doing away from work, so that they actually become better when they come to work, and we have a better culture and we have a better team, and people are held more accountable to each other because we are actually holding ourselves accountable on our own.
Yeah. And maybe one thing that we didn't touch on, which might be good in the little bit of time that we have left, is just being a good teammate. And anytime something bad happens to you, you have the opportunity to be selfish, and that's actually the most natural thing. Is when you feel like you're losing, you want to protect everything that you have. You're less likely to be generous and think about other people. We see this as baseball players. You see this as adults. You see this as executives. What sort of team building processes have you developed over your experience as a pro athlete, but then also your experience with cancer, that you help organizations integrate? Because I doubt there's that many people in the world who have the experience that you have
Mhm.
in the multiple arenas that you have, basically thinking about other people when you have the opportunity and excuse to think about yourself.
For me, it comes down to three things. One, are you living authentically? Like, have you sat down and really thought about who you are and what you want, and now how are you going to go about it? Are you living authentically? There's a lot of times where, whether it's individuals or during a Q&A, people ask, like, how do I deal with burnout? Well, for me, burnout comes down to two things. One, I've never been burned out on anything I love. I get burned out on the responsibilities. I get burnt out on having to pay rent every month. Those are the things I get burnt out on. I don't get burnt out on things that I love and I enjoy. And so pushing people to find those things, to be that balance, and also to realize that if I'm finding joy and I realize that I have more sunny days than I actually do, well, then I can actually have a perspective that I really didn't have a rainy day. It really was a rainy moment. And because I'm mentally weak, I turned it into a rainy day. The second part about burnout too is that people get burnt out on trying to fake it. You're not living authentically. You're not living who you should be. You're trying to please everybody. And that external validation is exhausting, because at some point it's going to go away. So being able to live authentically. Two, I think it's vulnerability. A lot of people are just not comfortable being vulnerable. So when I'm out here telling my story and being able to share with people that literally the day I found out I had cancer, I had just gotten done at the gym deadlifting, like literally dropped the weights and my phone rang. So like, you're deadlifting 500 pounds, feeling like the Incredible Hulk, and literally 1 minute later, you're being told that you have cancer. So like,
Jeez.
you got to be able to be vulnerable with who you are and be able to share your story with people, because that takes down the barriers. That takes down people's walls. That allows people to realize that, oh shit, we actually have more in common than we thought we did. And the relationships actually get stronger that way. And then the third thing is, going back to baseball being a good teammate, like, can you celebrate other people's wins while you're in a losing season? It's really, how many days did we have where we're 0 for 3, 0 for 4 with, pop up 2 ground balls and a strikeout or whatever it may be. But like, shit, Alex, you're 4 for 4. Let's go, baby. Like, I'm pumped for you. And again, that takes maturity. It takes time. It takes being able to know that, like, there's a bigger picture to all of this. Like, our days are done. We got done playing baseball, what are we now? 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And like, here we are. And like, our relationship's better now because we understood at the time, like, it was about building those relationships, and the relationships are what's going to withstand time. Not just being able to turn a double play together.
Right. Well, awesome, V. This has been a great experience. I hope for everybody listening in, viewing, you got what I've gotten knowing Chris over the last several years, just the depth of his story. Like, subscribe, obviously, comment below. Reach out to him on his website, chrisvasami.com. Reach out to me if you want, more inside scoops on him. This is what we're trying to do with Triple Sigma. We're trying to bring you the best minds in my network, the smartest people, the most impressive people that you can learn from as a high-performing individual to try to make your life better. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next time.